Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gabester here. This is the Heroic Quick Raid Guide for Malkorok, the 9th boss in Siege of Orgrimmar. If you'd just like the full guide with a lot more detail, you can click on the annotation in the bottom left there, or any of the role-specific guides for details about handling that role. So to begin, there are a couple new abilities on Heroic, but the most important of which that really affects everyone in the raid is the orbs that will spawn, the Essence of Yasarj orbs. You can see these are white orbs that are appearing all around the room, and they generally spawn underneath or near a ranged raid member. They do not prefer melee targets. If you touch an orb, you will completely remove your current stack of the Miasma shield, the Absorb, as well as take 150,000 damage. So essentially you remove the shield and take 150,000 damage directly to your health pool. So, if you do this too many times in any given phase before you reach Blood Rage, you'll die. There's no way to avoid it. So this is the main thing to focus on in this phase, or excuse me, throughout the fight for Heroic, is avoiding these orbs while dealing with all the normal mechanics that you would in the normal version. So the second addition on Heroic is Living Corruption, which you can see in the right of the screen, the top of the screen there. This spawns every time the boss uses Seismic Slam, which knocks a random ranged raid member into the air. So when that player gets knocked in the air, a corruption will spawn underneath their location, wherever they were. When the corruption appears, it needs to be taunted and picked up by your tanks quickly and brought to the center of the room. The corruption itself has normal threat, and it doesn't do a lot of damage on tanks in particular. However, it uses a constant pulse around itself in about 5 or 6 yard radius that will slow movement and cast speed by 75%. So this is a pretty massive reduction in movement. And if kept near any ranged players in particular that have to soak up these puddles, it's going to be very difficult for them to get into the puddle in time with that slow. So dealing with the corruptions properly is a really big important step for your tanks in this fight. They need to watch closely. In addition, your range should stay close enough to the center, if possible, such that the corruptions spawn within taunt distance of the center of the room. So there are a couple different strategies to handle Blood Rage on Heroic, but I'm only going to talk about the one you see in the video here, which is the solo tank method. So the basic idea here is that your tank, one of your tanks rather, will stand in front of the boss and be the only person in the frontal cone during Blood Rage, and they will solo this damage by using chaining cooldowns and getting spam heals, basically. This allows the rest of your raid to freely move around, use cooldowns on themselves, and soak up all the orbs that have been collecting over the previous phase. This greatly simplifies the follow-up phase, cleans everything up, and it's overall stronger DPS on the boss itself, since your raid doesn't need to worry about cleaning up orbs at another time. That's less convenient. So I would highly recommend using this method if you can do so. Monks are very strong for it. I believe paladins can do it quite well as well. And I'm not sure about other tanks. We don't have any of those. So anyway, give it a shot if you can. It's much easier to do it this way. The last thing to briefly discuss for the quick guide here is positioning and puddle soaking tips. So the best thing you can do is to have a minimum of 6 ranged players that can soak puddles. So between your ranged DPS and healers, try to have at least 6 players that can be spread out or distributed evenly around the room, so that a puddle spawning near them is always within reach. Obviously, the other thing is to communicate openly. If there are 2 puddles near one another, make sure you talk about which one you're soaking so that the partner near you can get the other, or vice versa. In addition to that, there'll be 1 puddle that always spawns near melee that should be picked up by either a melee DPS or your off tank at the time, whichever is more convenient for you. Make sure that the melee are aware that the Living Corruption will often be near them and active, which means they're going to be slowed pretty significantly. So your melee that's soaking the puddle needs to have an easy way to break that snare effect. So we use our Enhancement Shaman for that, basically. And that's pretty much it for positioning and puddle soaking. Other than that, the mechanics are all the same as on normal difficulty. So make sure you mark the locations of the cones, and after 3 everyone should get safe to avoid the breath, and then you reset and do it all again. So that is the quick raid guide for Malkorok Heroic. As always, good luck, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, please subscribe.